MSW Media.
News with swearing. Daily beans, daily beans. Daily beans, daily beans.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Beans for Tuesday, March 10th, 2026. Today, the Pentagon announces the 8th service member death in the Iran war. Republican Kevin Kiley from California is leaving the Republican Party to run as an independent, but I think he has ulterior motives. 2 people were taken into custody after a pair of suspicious devices were ignited Saturday during an anti-Islam protest outside of Gracie Mansion. U.S. intelligence intercepted messages that Iran may be activating sleeper cells. Anthropic AI is suing the Pentagon over their supply chain risk designation. Senator Tim Kaine says he's sorry that he voted to confirm Kristi Noem, but doesn't seem committed on voting no on Markwayne. And an inmate at the Metropolitan Correctional Facility in New York says they overheard prison guards discussing covering up Epstein's death. I'm Allison Gill.
And I'm Dana Goldberg.
So just a few things going on in the news today, huh?
And color me not surprised. That's a color, right? In the Crayola box?
It is. I'm not surprised. It's like it's in the 64 box.
Yeah, the big one.
That comes with the sharpener, yeah. Trump is learning that it's very difficult to walk back a war. He's trying to do that on TV right now as we speak in a press conference. Later in the show today, something really big happened today, especially if you're a longtime Beans listener, or even going back to the Mueller, she wrote days. I'll be talking to Adam Klasfeld about Donald Trump's Department of Justice offering a deferred prosecution, which a judge still has to approve, on the old Hulk Bank, Turkey's Hulk Bank indictment. Okay, this was something that Trump tried to stop from happening, and Bill Barr tried to stop from happening, because it was the biggest money laundering, like sanctions skirting crime in the history of Iran sanctions. So wow. Trump was trying to make it okay to launder money to fund probably some of the bombs that are being used against our forces in the region right now from Iran. But Klasfeld and I are going to talk about that case. It was the reason they tried to fire Berman at the Southern District of New York, is because he refused to get rid of the Hulk Bank case. So now they're trying to get rid of it another way. Now that he doesn't have any guardrails. And it's just, it's very interesting given what's going on in Iran right now.
Yeah, thank you, Allison. I'm sad to report we've lost our 8th service member. A member of U.S. National Guard died during a medical emergency in Kuwait on March 6th. The U.S. Central Command said that on Sunday. The 7th service member lost is 26-year-old Sergeant Benjamin N. Pennington of Glendale, Kentucky. Pennington died Sunday from injuries he sustained during a March 1 attack on the Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia.
Oh, my goodness.
And those are the numbers we have. I don't know if they're factual, if we've only lost 8 service members. I'm sure we will find out as time goes on if we're actually getting the correct numbers from our own administration.
Right. These are the numbers the Pentagon is reporting. Now, Kevin Kiley, he's a hated MAGA Republican here in California. His district's been a little bit redrawn because of Prop 50. He has decided he's changing right now his designation as a Republican to an independent, which could complicate the razor-thin majority that Mike Johnson holds in the House right now. He's going to have the House clerk write him in as an independent, though he said he's going to continue to caucus with Republicans, but I'm not sure how he's going to come down on some of the more procedural votes that happen in the House. But I honestly think that he is doing this to better his chances in now his Democratic-leaning district in California to run as an independent instead of a Republican. So he's a jerk. I don't think he's going to change his spots like some leopards do. No. But it could make it complicated for Mike Johnson. So we'll keep following that story. But yeah, he's changing to an independent, he says.
All right. Thanks, Allison. And the U.S. hasn't intercepted encrypted communications believed to have originated in Iran. They may serve as, quote, an operational trigger or sleeper assets outside the country. And this is according to a federal government alert sent to law enforcement agencies. The alert that was reviewed by ABC News cites, and I quote, preliminary signals analysis of a transmission likely of Iranian origin that was relayed across multiple countries shortly after the death of Khamenei. Now, the White House has halted, and the White House has halted, at least for now, a federal security bulletin warning of a heightened threat to the United States in light of the conflict in Iran. This is from a Trump administration. That's what they told Reuters.
So they put out a security threat that they could be activating sleeper cells in the United States, but they're also withholding a federal security bulletin warning of a heightened threat condition.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I feel safe. How about you?
Yeah, absolutely. Flying tomorrow. So, everything's great.
Yeah, get there super early. We're going to be reporting tomorrow on very long lines at some certain airports, Houston, Louisiana, for example, because of the DHS shutdown.
Yeah, Houston was ugly yesterday.
Yeah. Oh, did you go through Houston?
No, I did not. I saw the video, 4-hour wait in regular TSA, 2-hour in clear. And I'm going through, obviously, LAX into Nashville tomorrow for the show on Wednesday at Zany's. But I'm just, I'll get there early and hope for the best in LAX. I haven't seen any nonsense from there, but that doesn't mean it can't start at any moment, especially in the blue areas.
Yeah. Well, that's good. You're going to get there a day early. So
yes,
that can be helpful, I think. All right. We have a lot of news to get to. Let's hit the hot notes.
Hot notes.
All right, first up from NBC, 2 people were taken into custody after a pair of, quote, suspicious devices were ignited Saturday during anti-Islam protests outside of Gracie Mansion. That's where Zohran Mamdani lives, is a mayor of New York City's mansion. The incident occurred as an anti-Islam demonstration led by conservative influencer Jake Lang.
That piece of shit.
Isn't that the guy that kicked over the ice sculpture?
Yeah, and the one that was trying to do that, he was trying to burn a Quran on the steps of the Capitol in Minnesota, I believe it was, at least one of the buildings, and he was saved by a black man and a trans woman after all his racist posts.
Yeah, that little shithead. And a counter-protest were underway, by the way. Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch told reporters. An NYPD spokesperson said there were no injuries, fortunately. Now, Tisch said earlier that she did not believe Mayor Zohran Mamdani or First Lady Rama Douaji were inside the mansion at the time. But the police department clarified Saturday night that Mamdani was in the residence. Mamdani spokesperson Joe Calvello said the mayor and his wife are safe. Quote, thankfully, the mayor and the first lady are both safe, though the events are a stark reminder of the threats they both face regularly. That's what he said in a statement. A bomb squad examined the devices described as being smaller than a football and said they appeared to be jars wrapped in black tape with nuts, bolts, screws, and a hobby fuse. Quote, we do not yet know whether the devices were functional improvised explosive devices or hoax devices because we don't yet know if there was energetic material contained in them. That's what Tisch said, meaning you have a fuse, but what blows up if it's just full of nuts and bolts. So they're investigating that. Both devices were being transported for further testing and analysis. The Lang-led protest called Stop the Islamic Takeover of New York City, Stop New York City Public Muslim Prayer, that's the name of his protest, drew 20 participants. The counter-protest, Run the Nazis Out of New York City, Stand Against Hate, drew 125 demonstrators at its peak. The protest started around 11 a.m. with both groups separated into their designated areas by police, but tensions escalated shortly before noon. And at 12:15, one protester from the Lang group fired pepper spray at counter-protesters and was arrested.
Good.
Shortly after 12:30, 15 minutes later, an 18-year-old counter-protester lit and threw an ignited device toward the protest area. It landed in the crosswalk, and witnesses report seeing flames and smoke as it traveled through the air. The device struck a barrier and extinguished itself a few feet from police officers. That counter-protester, they ran and retrieved a second device from a 19-year-old man, according to the police. The 18-year-old lit the device and ran with it, then dropped it on the west side of the East End Avenue between East 86th and 87th Streets. Both people were taken into custody. NYPD said no charges have been filed as of yet. The men are from Pennsylvania, and law enforcement officials were headed there to speak to their relatives and contacts, according to sources familiar. Tisch said the whole incident was captured on NYPD surveillance cameras. She said there was no immediate indication the incident is related to the ongoing hostilities in Iran, but said the investigation is still ongoing. 6 people were arrested overall in Saturday's protest. The 2 men responsible for handling and deploying the devices, the person who deployed the pepper spray, and 3 others related to disorderly conduct and obstructing traffic. Mamdani is New York City's first Muslim mayor. The protest was held during the holy month of Ramadan, which is observed by Muslims around the world. Calvello condemned the Lang-led protest as despicable and Islamophobic. Okay, now Lang couldn't be immediately reached for comment. He's that right-wing provocateur who was pardoned for charges tied to the January 6th attack on the Capitol. He also, like you said, hosted an anti-immigration protest in Minneapolis in January in the days after the killing of Renee Good, who was fatally shot by a ICE officer, a CBP officer, prompting national outrage. Ahead of the rally, Lang promised to burn a Quran at the site of the demonstration, but actually never ended up doing it.
Yeah, because the crowd turned on him. He almost got his ass beat. That's what happened. This next story is from Politico. Anthropic, an AI company, on Monday sued the Trump administration for declaring the artificial intelligence company a risk to the Defense Department's supply chain, a step that further escalates a standoff over the ethical limits on increasingly powerful AI. In a lawsuit filed in the U.S. District Court of Northern District of California, Anthropic accused the government of violating its First Amendment rights, exceeding the legal scope of the supply chain risk statute, and circumventing the process through which the president and cabinet secretaries are even allowed to cancel government contracts. The company also filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration in the U.S. Court of Appeals in D.C. Circuit. And I quote, Anthropic turns to the judiciary as a last resort to vindicate its rights and halt the executive's unlawful campaign of retaliation. This is what the company's lawyers wrote in a California filing. The lawsuit names several federal agencies and cabinet officials as defendants, including Pete Hegseth. Yeah, Anthropic filed its second action in D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals because the court is charged with reviewing protests to administrative decisions made by the Secretary of Defense. And I quote, Anthropic petitions this court for review because the Department of War's actions are, among other things, a pretextual form of retaliation in violation of the First and Fifth Amendments to the Constitution. Anthropic's attorneys wrote that in a petition to the D.C. Circuit, noting that its lawsuit in California was challenging Hegseth's supply chain determination, rooted in a law that is not part of D.C.'s court's jurisdiction. Anthropic's twin legal attack on the Pentagon's decision was driven by laws that specifically govern which courts have authority to hear challenges of this kind being mounted by the company. The company in its California lawsuit also accused the government of exceeding the legal scope of the supply chain risk designation statute. Anthropic argued in court documents that the law is narrow and meant to address the risk that foreign adversaries could sabotage or subvert a national security system. A determination, it says, the government has not made about the company. Anthropic also argued in its California lawsuit that Trump and Hegseth exceeded their authority. What? By attempting to cancel the startup's government. I can't imagine.
No.
I know. By attempting to cancel the startup's government contracts without following correct procurement procedures. I'm not even involved in the case, and I can 100% guarantee that actually happened. The company also claims the government violated the Administrative Procedures Act and Anthropic's Fifth Amendment right to due process. And that wouldn't surprise me because this administration loves actually causing a problem with anyone's due process. So,
yeah. And let's keep in mind, this all started because Anthropic wanted to put in its contract that the government can't develop autonomous lethal weapons, robot killers, and that it can't use Anthropic's AI to surveil American citizens. And Hegseth lost his mind. You can't tell us what to do. And which means it sounds like they want to surveil American citizens and build, killer robots. So
yeah,
it's just bonkers. They ended up getting their contract with OpenAI, the Pentagon did. And so millions of people are leaving OpenAI and subscribing to Claude, or Cloud. A lot of people say Claude, with Anthropic for their AI needs. We don't use AI here.
No, we do not.
At the MSW Media. But it's been interesting to see the exodus from their company. And of course, Trump and Hegseth are like, we aren't going to take orders from some extreme liberal whatever. Like, it's a ridiculous public battle. All right, next up from the Miami Herald, an inmate housed at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York told the FBI he overheard guards talking about covering up Jeffrey Epstein's death on the morning he died. The federal government's online Epstein library contains a 5-page handwritten report of an FBI interview with an inmate who awoke the morning of August 10th, 2019 to the loud commotion in the Special Housing Unit, or SHU, S-H-U, where he and Epstein were both jailed. Quote, breathe, breathe, he recalled officers shouting about 6:30 a.m. Then he said he heard an officer say, dudes, you killed that dude. A female guard replied, if he's dead, we're going to cover it up and he's going to have an alibi, my officers. That's what the FBI note said.
Wow.
The inmate claimed the whole wing overheard this exchange too. Later, after learning Epstein had died, he said inmates said, Miss Noel killed Jeffrey. He identified the female guard as Tova Noel, one of the two correctional officers who were later charged with falsifying their reports, went to say that they went and checked on him when they didn't. Now, the charges against her and the other officer, Michael Thomas, were later dropped, but they were both fired. The inmate's account has not been substantiated, but it nevertheless raises questions about Epstein's in-custody death. Both the New York Medical Examiner and the U.S. Department of Justice concluded Epstein died by suicide. Dr. Michael Baden, a forensic pathologist hired by Epstein's estate to attend the autopsy, said he believes the injuries to Epstein were more akin to strangulation than suicide. Remember, his hyoid bone was broken.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this report is likely to fan suspicion, as the New York Post also reported on Saturday that Noel's bank flagged a $5,000 cash deposit she made to her Chase bank account on July 30th, 2019.
Stop it. Oh my God. I'm so engrossed in this story. I haven't read this. I haven't heard anything about this. You all obviously am hearing this in live time as she reads it. And I'm also completely enthralled as you are. Keep going.
Yeah. Now, a week after Epstein was found in his cell in what prison officials concluded was a suicide attempt on July 23rd, 2019. So that he had that attempt on the 23rd of July. She gets $5,000 on July 30th, and then he dies on August 10th. And then this other person reported to the FBI they overheard that they did it and that they're going to cover it up. The official reports into that incident show that Epstein initially told prison officials his cellmate tried to kill him after extorting him for money. The Post also reported that on the morning of Epstein's death, August 10th, Noel searched the term, quote, latest on Epstein in jail twice on a computer, once at 5:42 a.m. and another time at 5:52 a.m., about 40 minutes before the other guard, Michael Thomas, found Epstein dead. Her bank records, which are in the files, showed that Noel received thousands of dollars in cash and Zelle payments in the months before Epstein died. She's not been charged with any crime. The Miami Herald was unsuccessful in reaching her attorney on Saturday. Epstein's former cellmate, Efrain Reyes, told prison officials he told Epstein he would be safer if he paid inmates and guards for protection. Now, sources have told the Herald that Epstein did make protection payments. Noel's bank records also reveal she was making payments on a brand new Range Rover. But she was not asked about the cash during her DOJ interview. Epstein had 3 fractures on the left and right sides of his larynx, and Baden said it's rare for any bones to be broken in a hanging, let alone multiple bones. Quote, those fractures are extremely unusual in suicidal hangings and could occur much more commonly in homicidal strangulation. He also added there were hemorrhages in Epstein's eyes, petechial hemorrhaging, that are also more common in strangulation than hangings. The DOJ's official death investigation noted, quote, none of the inmates who were interviewed had any credible information suggesting Epstein's cause of death was anything other than suicide. The investigation also concluded the 3 interviewed inmates with a direct line of sight to Epstein's cell door stated that no one entered or exited Epstein's cell after Epstein was locked into a cell the night before. So all of that, and then if you watched me on Midas Touch on Sunday, one of those FBI Form 302s, and I think you and I talked about this, one of Epstein's survivors said she heard Trump and Epstein talking about blackmail, and her FBI 302, that was reported 3 days before Epstein was found dead in his cell. Yeah. So truth's gonna come out, you guys.
One day it is. Oh, okay. All right, this next story is from CBS. This is Senator Tim Kaine, as we know, a Virginia Democrat, expressed regret on Sunday for supporting Kristi Noem for Department of Homeland Security Secretary last year. Big mistake. That's what he said on Face the Nation with Margaret Brennan. Now, Trump announced Thursday that Noem would leave her role following she was fired. A string of controversies that boiled over last week. And the president announced that he selected GOP plumber Markwayne, who is now a senator. He's not just a GOP plumber, but also a senator of Oklahoma as her replacement. Kaine was one of 7 Democrats who voted in favor of Noem's confirmation to the role at the helm of DHS last year. On Sunday, Kaine, a former governor, pointed to Noem's time leading South Dakota as his justification for supporting her confirmation, saying governors are often good cabinet secretaries. Mm-hmm. Quote, but what we learned, and this bears going forward, is that she wasn't calling the shots. That's what Kaine said. Stephen Miller is calling the shots. And as long as he's calling the shots without reforms, this is going to continue to be a very, very rogue, renegade department. Kaine said Democrats fear that Mullen could face the same fate when he takes over DHS secretary, warning of the possibilities that he could bow to the top Trump aide. GOP Senator Tom Tillis of North Carolina also warned about Miller's outsized influence on Sunday, saying in CNN that Miller should be ousted as well, though Tillis said he believes Mullen will act more independently than Noem. Kaine also acknowledged that Mullen, and I quote, could demonstrate otherwise. Like Noem, Mullen will face a confirmation process in the Senate. At least that's what should happen. I don't know what Trump thinks is going to happen. Already he's received support from at least one Democrat. I'll let you guess who it is. John Fetterman. Yep, the switch up at DHS comes amid a stalemate over funding for the department. Democrats have demanded reforms to immigration enforcement agencies and have pledged to continue opposing all funding for the department until an agreement can be reached. Meanwhile, the department, which also oversees TSA, FEMA, and the Coast Guard, has been shut down since Valentine's Day after funding lapses. Kaine stressed the Democrats want to fund the other agencies at DHS while confining the ongoing negotiations to immigration enforcement agencies. He noted that DHS immigration enforcement received an influx of funds in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act last year. And I just want to say, was not making fun of plumbers. Markwayne, I was calling him a plumber because they like to call AOC a bartender. So I wanted to make sure that we're differentiating there, that how come they call her a bartender, but we don't call Markwayne a plumber? Because he's a senator and she's a congresswoman, but not a good guy. And I hate to say this, not a very smart guy if you've ever seen him do an interview. So I feel like Kristi Noem was pretty smart and dangerous. And I feel like this guy's pretty dumb and dangerous. And I don't know who he's going to be following. But I think instead of continuing to bring people like Kristi Noem into the congressional hearings to ask them questions, I think they need to subpoena Stephen fucking Miller. That's who I want to hear from.
Yeah, same. But to be like, oh, well, Kristi Noem and Markwayne can't make their own decisions. Stephen Miller runs the show. Like, that just lets Kristi Noem and Markwayne off the hook. And I don't think that's...
Agreed.
Yeah.
Because they can tell Stephen Miller to go fuck himself, and they're not.
Yeah. And every single Democrat, I know Fetterman won't, but every single Democrat should be voting no for Markwayne.
Absolutely.
All right, everybody, we have an Adam Klasfeld interview followed by the good news, but we have to take a quick break, so stick around. We'll be right back.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
DeleteMe makes it easy, quick, and safe to remove your personal data online at a time when surveillance and data breaches are common enough to make everyone vulnerable. So we want to thank our sponsor for today's episode, DeleteMe. I use DeleteMe to protect my business and my personal privacy. As someone with an active and extensive online presence, that matters a lot to me. When you spend a lot of time online, you have to assume your information is being collected and copied and sold in ways that you never agreed to. Your data becomes a commodity, and that means people you do not know can buy access to private details about you. And that's what makes data brokers so unsettling. They can compile your name, contact information, home address, social security number, even details about your family members, and then sell that info online for profit. That kind of exposure can lead to identity theft, phishing attempts, spam, harassment, doxing, and it's one more reason privacy feels harder and harder to hold on to. Now, I keep hearing about data breaches in the news as well. Hackers have gotten the names, addresses, phone numbers, and the last 4 digits of social security numbers and masked bank account numbers. And then data brokers can vacuum up all that leaked information and sell it again and again. DeleteMe helps remove your info from those sites and helps keep it out of the wrong hands. It's also been named Wirecutter's top pick for data removal services by the New York Times. So take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for DeleteMe. Now, at a special discount for listeners, get 20% off your DeleteMe plan when you go to joindeleteme.com/dailybeans and use promo code dailybeans at checkout. The only way to get 20% off is to go to joindeleteme.com/dailybeans and enter code dailybeans at checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/dailybeans, code dailybeans. I do not need one more reason to spend my Saturday in a store under fluorescent lights making bad choices next to a display wall. I already shop for groceries, gifts, random household stuff, and half my life I do all from home, even clothes now. So it makes perfect sense to shop for blinds that way too. I have absolutely bought something for my house that looked amazing in the store and then somehow looked deeply cursed once I got it home. So the idea of seeing window treatments in my actual space is very appealing. And that's why 3-Day Blinds makes so much sense. They're a leading manufacturer of high-quality custom window treatments in the United States, and they handle blinds, shades, shutters, draperies. Instead of dragging yourself to a showroom, they send a local design consultant to you. Their consultants are professionally trained. They have an average of more than 10 years of experience. They help you figure out what actually works in your home. You set an appointment, you get a free no-obligation quote the same day. It's so hassle-free. And the part I really love, they handle all the heavy lifting. They design, measure, install, which is great because I don't need another DIY project turning into a personal crisis. I was looking at their Instagram, and honestly, these are really good-looking blinds. They can really pull a room together. Plus, they have thousands of options, including blackout, light filtering, and even smart blinds that work with Alexa. Right now, get quality window treatments that fit your budget with 3-Day Blinds. Head to 3dayblinds.com/dailybeans for their buy one, get one 50% off deal on custom blinds, shades, shutters, and draperies. For a free, no charge, no obligation consultation, just head to 3dayblinds.com/dailybeans. One last time, that's buy one, get one 50% off when you head to the number 3dayblinds.com/dailybeans. Welcome. Joining me today to discuss something that happened today that will probably fly under the radar is Adam Klasfeld from All Rise News. So welcome, Adam. How are you?
Doing well, Allison. How are you? And I agree with you entirely. It probably will, but should not fly under the radar as the war in Iran rages. This is a case that is not irrelevant to that.
No, it's not. And folks who've been listening to the Daily Beans for a while, and I mean years, maybe even going back to the Mueller, She Wrote podcast days, we covered the Hawk Bank case pretty extensively. And I know that you did too. You followed it pretty extensively. And just yesterday, Adam, I was going through some old posts on social media, keyword search Iran, just to see what I was posting about Iran in the past. And way back in 2020, I said, whenever anyone asks me if the Southern District of New York is compromised by Bill Barr, I always remind them of the Hawk Bank indictments. But as it turns out, that's what got the U.S. attorney at the Southern District of New York fired. So let's talk about, if we can go back a little bit and talk about Hawk Bank and the prosecution and how Trump and his folks like Matthew Whitaker and Brian Benchkowski and Rudy Giuliani were trying to lobby Bill Barr to drop this case against Hawk Bank. And that's why Berman was fired at the Southern District of New York. Talk a little bit about this case. It's been a long, grinding case. They've been trying, the independent prosecutors at the Southern District of New York have been trying to bring this case and did successfully bring it for a really long time now. And the news today is that the Trump administration and the Department of Justice, I put justice in air quotes, is offering a deferred prosecution to Hawk Bank. They want to unwind this indictment. So talk a little bit about the history of this case.
So this is a case that Donald Trump has been trying to get rid of for the better part of a decade. About 9 years ago, it was in March, that Reza Zarrab, who's a Turkish-Iranian playboy who was a gold trader and the man who spearheaded this money laundering scheme, was arrested in the United States while en route to Disney World, of all places. So he was arrested at the airport. So began
He was arrested on the way to Disney World?
Yes, absolutely. And
Rob, you've just laundered billions of dollars from the Turkish government. What are you going to do next? I'm going to Disney World?
It is one of the many interesting wrinkles of this case, let's say. And there are people who have theories about the real reason, but the reason officially on paper that he was going there with his wife there, he was also an avid scuba diver, absolutely did have plans to scuba dive in Florida, but I digress. What makes this geopolitically such a combustible case is that Reza Zarrab masterminded a money laundering scheme that has been roiling Turkish politics since 2013. It is linked to a corruption scandal implicating Erdogan's government back when he was prime minister, before he became president and established essentially authoritarian rule in Turkey, largely in his efforts to cover up the corruption scheme that grew out of this $20 billion money laundering conspiracy. What Reza Zarrab was charged with and ultimately pleaded guilty to doing was funneling money from Iran's national oil company to Halkbank, a Turkish state-run bank. He would have couriers deliver those assets, which were essentially taken over international borders in gold bars that were couriered over international borders, melted down, and converted into a way that could go remove the taint of Iranian oil sanctions in the international economy. Prosecutors estimated that the scheme was $20 billion. And then, lo and behold, very shortly after Zarrab's arrest, we find out among his many attorneys are Rudy Giuliani and Michael Mukasey. Now, this is a shock to much of the legal community because Rudy Giuliani, who burnished his reputation after the 9/11 attacks on the World Trade Center, was an anti-Iran hawk. And here he is representing someone who spearheaded a record-breaking money laundering scheme that benefited the Iranian government. And his role in it, I was covering the Southern District of New York. You mentioned the Southern District of New York's reputation of independence. Those who covered the beat knew that the prosecutors in that office considered themselves the sovereign district of New York. And what Rudy Giuliani did in that case, he never set foot in the court. What he did was worked behind the scenes in what became a very familiar pattern of shadow diplomacy. He would shuttle between Washington and Ankara, trying to engineer a prisoner swap that would have freed Zarrab from prison and essentially torpedoed the case. But that failed. Zarrab turned state's witness and testified against a manager at Halkbank named Hakan Atilla. Now, while he was testifying, Zarrab, in Attila's case, he implicated Erdogan himself in sanctions-busting trades. You had people who were high-ranking in Erdogan's government who were co-defendants in the criminal conspiracy, and that there were who were named in corruption scandals. This was something that caused intense attention from Turkey, which at the time was being decimated by prosecutions against journalists. It was the leading jailer of journalists at the time of that prosecution. And so there was intense interest from Turkey in what was transpiring in the U.S. courtroom. And it seemed that people close to Trump were invested in making it disappear. Now, flash forward, we find out that that Preet Bharara, who brought the case, was pressured out for reasons undisclosed. He has never confirmed that Halkbank was one of the reasons that Trump wanted him out, but there has been speculation to that effect. After Hakan Atilla was convicted by a jury, the predecessor of one of the successors of Preet Bharara, Jeffrey Berman, took over the investigation and indicted Halkbank itself. And that was a key action because, one, that's when the estimate of the $20 billion conspiracy came to light. If that estimate were accurate, that's a number that could have severe ramifications for the Turkish economy and Erdogan's hold to power. And Erdogan intensely lobbied the U.S. government to make this case go away. That effort tried and failed with Reza Zarrab, and as things were coming to a head under Jeffrey Berman's stewardship, he was forced out by Bill Barr. Bill Barr it had come out due to reporting subsequent to that Bill Barr was upset because he had pressured Jeffrey Berman to try to dismiss the case, settle it before an indictment went through. He pushed the case forward. He refused. And there was congressional testimony on this. This is where it gets very interesting. During that testimony, he said that Bill Barr wanted to replace him with a former Securities and Exchange Commission chairman named Jay Clayton. And Berman's reaction to that was Jay Clayton is an unqualified choice. That was the word that he used. He was someone with no criminal experience that if you want me out, you're going to have to replace me with my trusted deputy, Audrey Strauss. Berman ultimately allowed that to happen, folded. He was replaced with Audrey Strauss. The prosecution of Halkbank survives. Flash forward till today. Now, I'll mention in passing in the intervening years when Biden was elected president during his tenure, the case was about to proceed to trial, but Halkbank appealed a ruling that refused to dismiss the case on sovereign immunity grounds. It goes all the way up to the Supreme Court at a glacial pace. By the time the Supreme Court resolves that appeal, the new person in charge of the Southern District of New York is, guess who? Jay Clayton, who is now currently the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. And so now the outcome that Trump wanted, this case is going to go away. I've read the copy of the deferred prosecution agreement. There doesn't appear to be any financial penalty to Turkey's state-run Halkbank, let alone a $20 billion criminal conspiracy, the kind of penalty that one would expect that would relate to something like that. They agreed to certain monitoring by an outside expert. It's a little vague as to who that expert will be, how the expert will be selected, and it is justified on the grounds that apparently the Trump administration used the Halkbank case that they said that we can help make this case go away if you participate in the negotiations to release the hostages. So they are claiming that this case essentially became the bargaining chip in those negotiations. Now, this is going to go before a federal judge who has presided over this entire saga. Judge Richard Berman, no relation to Jeffrey Berman, the former U.S. attorney. He's the one who has called for a hearing on Wednesday to find out more about this deal. And he is someone who has been on record dealing with the kind of politics that have underlied this case very skeptically. So we'll see how much he challenges the government about the reasons for this sudden deferred prosecution agreement.
Hey, everybody, it's AG. Most edibles tend to hit me like a Mack truck, and that is not really what I'm looking for. I want something that helps me feel a little lighter, a little happier, a lot more like myself. And I want to thank Lumi Gummies for always making me feel just right. Consistent, mellow, super delicious. Lumi Gummies are specifically designed to make you feel good, not stoned. Whether you're looking for an end-of-day de-stressor or a midday mood boost, Lumi Gummies has a strain that's right for you. Lumi Gummies stood out to me because I tend to be careful with hemp products. I prefer options that feel straightforward. And what I noticed first was that the lineup is strain specific. So it was easier to keep track of what I was trying instead of treating every gummy like it would be the same. I tried Cotton Candy Kush and one evening and the Rainbow Sherbet another evening. Both fantastic. I was able to get done what I still needed to do while feeling nice and relaxed, not overwhelmed or trapped on the couch. I also like when a product gives you enough information to make your own decisions carefully, especially if you're someone who doesn't want surprises. For me, that appeal was less about chasing an intense experience and more about choosing something that felt measured, clearly labeled, and easy to understand. Lumi Gummies are there to make your day better, not take it over and waste your time. Lumi Gummies are available nationwide. Go to lumigummies.com. That's LUMI gummies.com and use code DailyBeans for 30% off your order. Again, that's LUMI gummies.com, code DailyBeans. lumigummies.com, code DailyBeans.
Yeah, boy, I have so many questions because when Halkbank was first indicted, I was like, wow, okay, so it really is the sovereign district of New York because Donald Trump didn't want this to happen.
Right.
And now, the claim that it was some sort of a bargaining chip and some sort of a deal sort of falls away when you look at all of the money that's been funneled from Erdogan to Donald Trump over the years. We had a Erdogan-tied business guy that gave $1 million to Trump's inaugural. I think there was a strange multi-million-dollar gift from Turkey and Erdogan to Donald Trump that ended up maybe, I think, in a Chinese bank account. I can't quite remember the details, but there has been so much money that has exchanged hands between Turkey and Erdogan-tied Turkish businessmen to Donald Trump that this just on its face seems like, and has always seemed like, a pay for play, like a quid pro quo. I remember when Erdogan was going to pay Mike Flynn $15 million to find Gulen and spirit him away in the night back to a cleric back to Turkey for Erdogan. So there's always been sort of this overhanging or overarching feeling that this is Donald Trump returning a favor, to Erdogan and the Turkish government. So, I mean, exactly everything you laid out is something that I talked about in 2024, particularly the Supreme Court, who then sent it back down to the Second Circuit for additional eyes or additional, litigation. But, I wrote way back when everybody was on Twitter, I said, hey, did you know Donald Trump tried to mercilessly shield a Turkish bank from facing punishment for helping fund Iran? While president, he fired the prosecutors investigating it, asked cabinet officials to obstruct justice by pressuring the DOJ to drop the probe. The crime perpetrated by Halkbank is the biggest effort to evade sanctions against Iran in history. Trump personally pressured Matt Whitaker and Bill Barr to drop the case, fired Preet Bharara. Rex Tillerson even refused an order from Trump to pressure the DOJ to back off. And when Trump met with Erdogan at the G20, he told them he would take care of it. And 2 weeks later on a phone call, he told Erdogan that he had assigned Barr and Mnuchin to handle the issue, which is what you were referring to. And that same month, Kushner and Mnuchin met with Turkish officials in the Oval Office. And then Mnuchin met with them 6 more times, all to allow money to continue to flow to Iran. Trump then fired Bharara's successor, Jeffrey Berman. Halkbank was eventually indicted, but SCOTUS remanded the case back to the Second Circuit, saying they had to consider whether Turkey had diplomatic immunity. When that indictment came down, as I said, I was very surprised that it came down under a Trump administration. And that's why I put out that tweet that whenever anybody questions the sovereignty or the independence of the Southern District of New York, I always cite the Halkbank indictments. But now those are gone. So what is a deferred prosecution? Because that's what's happening now, right?
Right. What it usually means in a traditional case is you abide by certain conditions for a certain amount of time, and then the case goes away. And the conditions in this case would be court-appointed monitoring. They're supposed to help. Halkbank is supposed to help with executing any sort of fines or forfeitures against Reza Zarrab. As I read the agreement, there's no specific fine levied against the bank itself. And just to follow up on some of the points that you made, Allison, during Trump's campaign, I think his first interview with Steve Bannon that he did on Bannon's radio program, Bannon, one of his first questions was about some sort of military crisis involving the Turkish government. And Trump's response to that, right before he said anything else, is, I have a little bit of a conflict of interest involving the Turkish government because of Trump Towers. 2 towers instead of 1. Not the usual one, it's 2. He was referring to Trump Towers Istanbul. And that was something that set the tone. There were people, when the Mueller investigation was proceeding, you had investigations into Turkish ties. You mentioned Michael Flynn, but that was a running theme of a lot of the Mueller investigations looking into Turkish influence in Trump's burgeoning government. And during Trump 1.0, the Southern District was facing so much upheaval, specifically because federal prosecutors and U.S. attorneys there in particular refused to do Trump's bidding. And what we're seeing in Trump 2.0 is the hollowing out of that ethos, that the very person who Jeffrey Berman did not want in that office, Jay Clayton, who he thought was, in his words to the House judiciary, unqualified for that role. Jay Clayton is now leading it. It was hollowed out with the Eric Adams prosecution, which was a prosecution for bribery involving the Turkish government. That was a case that disappeared quite quickly in Trump 2.0. So,
right. So you wonder about what were the motives to let Eric Adams off the hook? Was it really about letting ICE into Rikers, or was it about letting Turkey off the hook as well?
Right. I mean, one can say that Trump absolutely has a soft spot when it has to do with allegations of corruption with the Turkish government and just foreign influence peddling generally involving the Turkish government. One of the things that John Bolton said in his memoir when discussing Trump's effort to dismiss the Halkbank case, that he wanted to do it as a favor to Erdogan, who he described as one of the dictators Trump liked. So, so that was the kind of generally known and generally spoken about environment in which this was panning out. You mentioned Rex Tillerson. Rex Tillerson's role in it was in a White House meeting involving Giuliani, when Rudy Giuliani was shuttling back and forth from Ankara to the United States to try to free Reza Zarrab and kill this case. The meeting in the Oval Office was between Trump, Tillerson, and Giuliani and Trump were essentially lobbying Tillerson, then Secretary of State, to reach this deal that would have freed Reza Zarrab. And that would have spelled an end to any sort of reckoning over the corruption scandal that electrified the people of Turkey, that paid very close attention to that criminal trial in New York. It was a story about democracy, both in the United States and in Turkey. It was a story about international corruption, about money laundering. I worked with a news organization, Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project, OCCRP for short. And when you start to investigate money laundering networks, a lot of the illegality is very interconnected. It's woven into a lot of national security risks. It's woven into, drug trafficking and other things that the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project did a great job in kind of exposing the shell companies and things of that nature. So this was a story of great interest to folks who follow those shadow economies, and it was also of great interest to folks who followed the democratic decline of countries like Turkey and the United States. And it comes full circle.
Yeah. And then it grows even more branches and tentacles when you just talk about skirting Iran sanctions. I mean, how many schemes were there and are there to do that that somehow had Trump's name on it? We have his Azerbaijan tower, where he was laundering that. Well, I don't know if he was, but money was being laundered through that project to the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. We had, and Ivanka got wrapped up in that somehow. I'd have to go back and look at that particular article that came out at the time, the one with the photo of the tower. I think it's a pretty memorable article that came out at the time about that. We can talk about, and you remember when $6 billion was freed up for the Iranian people under the Biden administration, and Trump, when MAGA were like, he's giving billions of dollars to the Iranians. It's like, that's the money you helped skirt and put into a Qatari bank account. And it's going to be used by us for like food and medicine and humanitarian aid and things like that. It was like this whole political football that was happening before the 2024 election.
Right.
and then in the 2022 midterm. So this thing, like, not just this particular biggest sanctions busting money laundering scheme in the history of Iranian sanctions, but when you add on top of it all of the other ways that Trump is always somehow connected to skirting Iranian sanctions, I mean, the whole web just gets giant, and we could spend hours talking about it.
Right. Well, once again, this particular scheme, if you look at the Hawk Bank indictment, the prosecutors estimate it was a $20 billion money laundering scheme. As I understand it, with the Iran deal, the billions of dollars at issue there were Iran's own frozen money. Here, we're talking about illicitly funneled and transferred money. The prosecutors don't say in the deferred prosecution agreement that there was anything wrong with the case. Quite the contrary, they're trying to negotiate certain measures of oversight over Hawk Bank to prevent the same thing from happening again. Now, whether there's anything rigorous there will remain to be seen. And I'm going to be in federal court on Wednesday to see the judge interrogate what this agreement actually means. But what we have here is, at the same time that Trump is pursuing a war in Iran and telling the Iranian people to rise up, we are seeing him simultaneously trying to end this longstanding prosecution that was of a money laundering scheme that enriched the Iranian regime to a level that was there's nothing comparable in the annals of U.S. criminal prosecution. And, take that in connection. And I know this is a separate story, but remember over the weekend, we had Carrie Lake declared unlawfully appointed to the head of U.S. Agency for Global Media, the company that's an umbrella of Voice of America, Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, and all of those. Well, these are media entities that operate in dozens of languages, including Persian, to get raw information and news into authoritarian places where the people cannot access it. That it's there's something very galling, frankly, to see among all of the carnage and the horrible things that we're seeing in the images of this war in Iran playing out at the same time that we are seeing efforts to block news organizations from getting information to the people of Iran because those news organizations are being hollowed out. We're seeing efforts to end the criminal prosecution of the biggest money laundering scheme of Iranian oil money in U.S. history, the biggest sanctions violating scheme, that trying to end that, which is a long time goal. It's a nearly decade-long ambition that we've rattled off throughout our conversation. And it's been a tangled tale of lobbying through Trump surrogates in Washington, in Ankara, trying to force out prosecutors who are pursuing the case and investigators. That they've been trying to do this for a decade, and it's coming to a head now during a devastating war in Iran as we hold this Substack Live.
Yeah, and one has to wonder how many of the weapons and bombs that are being used against our forces in the region by Iran were funded by this money laundering scheme that Trump is trying to let them off the hook for in Turkey. All right. Thank you, my friend. Always great to talk to you. Everybody make sure you follow All Rise News. If you're able to contribute monetarily, everything's always free. But if you're able to support the travel and the work of Adam Klasfeld, please do on his Substack at All Rise News. And we'll be keeping an eye on what you have to say about the hearing on Wednesday and this case, about what this judge might have to say about a deferred prosecution agreement. I appreciate your time today. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Allison, and I'll keep you apprised about what the judge has to say about it.
Awesome. Thanks. And thanks, everybody, for listening.
Hey, everybody, welcome back. It's time for the good news.
Who likes good news, everyone? Then good news, everyone.
Good news, good news.
And if you have any good news you want to share with us, it can be small, it can be big good news, it can be from yesterday or 20 years ago. It doesn't matter. Send it to us. We would love to hear from you. You can also send in your good trouble suggestions for our good trouble segment, which happens at the top of the good news. You can also send a shout out to a loved one, spouse, partner, small business in your area that could use a boost. Your small business, let us know what you're making or creating. We would love to hear about that. You can do a self shout out. We absolutely love self shout outs. You can do a shout out to a government program that's helped you or a loved one, so we can get our stories out there about why our government programs are so important to us. And it's seriously just anything at all that'll make us smile. We can need to microdose the hope. Send it to us. dailybeanspod.com, click on contact. And all you got to do to get your stuff right on the air is pay your pod pet tariff, which means just attach a photo. It can be anything. It can be your pet. It can be an adoptable pet in your area. It can be you flipping the bird to Trump buildings. It can be random animals on the internet. It can be baby pictures, your baby pictures. It doesn't matter, whatever it is. So show us your chickens and your goats, and maybe you're a cyclist. Let's see your bike. Let's see what you're knitting, what you're quilting. Maybe you've been to a rally and you have some favorite signs you want to share with us so that we can start to get our signs ready for No Kings on March 28th. Anything at all. dailybeanspod.com, click on contact. And that brings us to our good trouble. And your good trouble today is a reminder that the No Kings event is Saturday, March 28th. Events are all over the country. If you don't have an event near you, start an event near you. You can find the events at nokings.org. And there's like a section where you can click on the map to see if there's an event near you. And, also while you're at it today, just call your senators and tell them to vote no on Markwayne Mullen for DHS, and to remind them that even though the pain point at the airport seems to seems to be beginning right now, to not cave on funding DHS until these changes at ICE and CBP are made. So they're still fully funded. They're still working. Mm-hmm. They're still getting paid from that big ugly bill. So just download that 5 calls app and make a few calls.
I got a little good trouble update. This is from Shelby, pronouns she and her, and I love this. Hello, beautiful beans. I'm a huge fan of all the way back to the beginning of Jack and AG and Andy. I really want to thank you for your pod. I live in Palm Beach County, Florida, and it has been a little hard to find a community of activists. Many friends who are like-minded, they're just simply busy with their lives, and I find myself attending protests by myself. My husband would come, but we have the kiddos. So I do bring my family when I know it's tame, but with 2 tweens with special needs, it doesn't always work out. When I listened to your 226 podcast with Cliff Cash and heard the event 3 miles to Mar-a-Lago, I perked right up. This sounded amazing, and I felt so lucky it was only 25 minutes for me. The event was supposed to be at an outdoor amphitheater, so I packed my husband and 2 boys and snacks and chairs, and off we went. The event location was changed due to doxing or something and wound up being moved indoors at a place in downtown West Palm Beach. We still went, folding chairs and all, and what a lineup they had. I got to listen to and meet comedian Cliff Cash, Earth to Eve. Everyone look up Earth to Eve. I'm telling you, you want to know where the protest songs are coming from right now? A lot of them are coming from that. We got Robert Arnold, who's a poet and a writer. Adrienne Betancourt, whose father has been in Alligator Alcatraz in September of 2025. Candidate Marielana Kinter for U.S. Congress in Florida, District 7, who's a Navy vet, who's running against the accused domestic violence prick Corey Mills. Candidate and firefighter Bernard Taylor, U.S. Congress, Florida, District 21, who's running against MAGA Rep. Brian Mast. And Carlos Alvarez Araños, and America's Opposition, and more. After the speeches and performance, everyone got into buses and we went 3 miles to an earshot of Mar-a-Lago to protest the Orange Idiot. It was some great good trouble. It is so hard right now everywhere. Living in Florida, where I vehemently disagree with about 50% of the population, including my own mother, sometimes gives me a feeling of dread and hopelessness. After yesterday's event, I feel re-energized and hopeful. I can't thank you enough for your coverage of this. I was able to connect with some wonderful women with organizations I didn't even know about. I'm off to fight the good fight and get into some great good trouble with actual assignments because of you and your podcast. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I listen to your podcast every morning in the car. doing kid drop-offs. My son Eli absolutely loves your opening song and insists the song is Jelly Beans, and makes me play it at least 6 to 8 times. I just wanted you to know your conversations keep me sane in this crazy time. Keep it up. You both rock. For my pod pet tariff, I give you Tommy. We got him for my son Joshua's 10th birthday. Tommy's now 4. As you can see, Josh is Tommy's biggest fan. Here he is with the personalized Tommy pajamas, complete with little Tommies all over his bottoms and one big Tommy with a bow on top, posing with the actual Tommy. We rescued Tommy, the tabby cat with the adorable white paws, and from a Second Chance Puppies and Kittens rescue in Palm Beach, Florida, a rescue group I volunteer with. The rescue saves puppies, dogs, kittens, and cats from all over. They drive an RV around and pick up abandoned animals in kill shelters in Alabama and Florida. We don't have an actual shelter. We foster animals directly out to people so the animals are socialized when it comes to adopting them. To a network of 200 plus fosters in southern Florida. The website is asecondchancerescue.org. And you can see all the little lives saved and adoptions we're responsible for on their Facebook group, which is a Second Chance Puppies and Kitties Rescue. We'll have a link to the Facebook group if you want to go visit. We are always in need of more fosters to give them a shout out. Thank you and keep on keeping on. Your biggest fans in Florida, Shelby, Lewis, Josh, Elijah, and Tommy.
This is an incredible Good Trouble update. And yeah, man, kids love They Might Be Giants.
I know, right?
So they all love the intro. They don't listen to the rest of the show, but they're really, really into the Jelly Bean song. So thank you for that update. Really appreciate it. Look at this sweet kitty. Those jammies are great, by the way. It's so funny. Thank you so much for that. Next up from Gabe, pronouns he and him, La Rellenas de Frijoles. I wanted to share some good news and an invitation. My play, Level Up, is set to open April 4th in Los Angeles at the Los Angeles Theater Center. Level Up is about a young trans tween who's afraid to come out to her family and only feels like she can be herself in her virtual world. A quest to save her dying dog pushes her to deal with challenges both in the real and virtual worlds. The play is a commission that has been years in the making. One of the theaters behind the commission got cold feet after Trump was elected again, but the Latino theater company felt putting the story on stage catering to a trans girl of color is even more important given the times we're living in. I agree. So we have the latinotheaterco.org/level up. There'll be a link in the show notes. Amazing, Gabe. That's so incredible. I've attached a photo as pet tax. These are my 3 dogs. Ruby, our anxious copper-colored blank. Matilda, our mischievous light-colored blank. And Sweet Tooth, our less than brilliant mutt, who is blank blank. Oh my goodness. There's so many dogs here. So we've got a Rhodesian Ridgeback, I can see because of the
Ridgeback, yep.
Both like Ridgebacks.
Good.
What is this little terrier Chihuahua style mixed dog? Let's see what we got. We got a copper colored Ridgeback. We got a light colored Ridgeback. And Sweet Tooth is not a Jack Russell.
Okay. That very clear. I just saw the other Ridgeback, by the way. I'm going to light in the dark. Those are so fun.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
Yeah.
Absolutely beautiful dogs.
All
Thanks
right.
for that.
Next up from Nicole, pronouns she and her. Hi, lovely legumes. Thank you for
Hello.
always giving me the news with a little bit of hope. It helps me get through the day so I don't start screaming. Today, you made a comment that Trump can be moved by the wind, and it reminded me of a story about a poet in ancient China, Su Dong Po. Take a read of The 8 Winds Cannot Move Me. I think you'll enjoy it. I think the same wind that moved him across a lake is moving Trump now. He's being moved by, oh my God. Got it.
Too long, didn't read. He's being moved
by farts. As my pod pet tariff, please enjoy the best photo I've ever taken of my lovely murder queen, Annie. She gets supervised walks outside and she hates them. The supervision, not the walks. The 8 Winds Cannot Move Me. We'll have a link to that in the show notes.
Look at that kitty cat in nature. Nicole, thank you for that. Next up from Mike, pronouns he and him. Hello, magnificent ladies of the legumes. I am a kitchen table listener, and I want to thank both of you and all the people behind the scenes who help us sift through the daily avalanche of impeachable and repugnant bullshit that passes for presidential administration. If you're new to the Daily Beans, when somebody refers to a kitchen table days or the kitchen table listener, the Mueller, She Wrote podcast back in 2017 or whatever was started at my kitchen table. The sound was terrible. We had like $10 microphones that we could hear the fridge running in the background. But it was one of those situations, Dana, where, you know, sometimes you toil to make something perfect and it never gets done. So just start.
Yeah.
Just start and,
Well said.
and build your wings on the way down. Living in Music City is both amazing and frustrating. This blue dot in a blood red gerrymandered to hell state has some amazing people doing the Lord's work. Every time you mention a story involving Nashville's nosiest bitch, Phil Williams, or you have an interview with him on the podcast, I smile because of his great investigative journalism. Sadly, Tennessee is a laboratory for destructive and immoral legislation, and the state's GOP supermajority is steadily chipping away at Nashville's local control. I bring this up because so many people across the country regularly write off the South, failing to recognize exactly how much we've been disenfranchised in our own states. It would be nice, you know, for the DNC to put up more of a fight instead of surrendering many elections before any votes have even been cast. Speaking of somebody who's been putting up a fight, I think your listeners should know about Chris Sanders and his tireless work with the Tennessee Equality Project in mobilizing us LGBTQ plus Tennesseans and our allies against the hateful legislation our wonderfully corrupt and poorly educated state legislators regularly file. Check out TEP at www.tnep.org and the vital work they do. We'll have a link in the show notes. This is a producer's note. The Tennessee Equality Project advocates for equal rights of LGBTQ people in Tennessee through legislative advocacy. They lobby the Tennessee General Assembly and local governments around the state. When there's an important federal issue, like anti-LGBTQ adoption issue language in legislation, they help you make your voice heard with your federal officials. So now Mike continues. Over the years, I've considered writing, but didn't for one reason or another. Today, though, I want to shout out my husband, Daniel. We've been together for 15 years, married for 5, and a few weeks ago, he received a major promotion, rewarding his hard work and ingenuity. Outside of work, Daniel is so dependable and handy that some people get used to all the things he takes care of without realizing those things don't just magically happen. As an actor, dancer, website designer, Excel wizard, set builder, and such a good singer he can surprise folks in Music City, Daniel is one of the smartest, most talented, and most caring people I know, and I can't imagine my life without him. Love you, babe. And Dana, back in December, I bought us tickets to see Bridget Everett, whom we've seen once before on March 11th, but we're skipping her because we can't wait to see you at Zany's and meet during the post-show VIP thingamajig.
This means so much to me. Please tell all the other gays. I found out recently I am up against Bridget Everett in Nashville. So we've got a small but mighty crowd at Zany's. And I love that you're going to be part of it, Mike. You and your husband cannot wait to meet you. But yeah, it's going to be like like a living room concert, like a living room comedy show.
Everybody, if you're not going to go see Bridget Everett, come see Dana.
Yes.
You can get tickets at danagoldberg.com. Last, here's a picture of a bridge protest sign I saw Friday driving home on I-440 during rush hour. The traffic was at a standstill, so I couldn't resist. Keep up the terrific work, y'all. Love, Mike. I've seen this. Tennessee Holler posted this.
Awesome.
His files, their war, your kids.
Amazing.
Wow. Well done.
All right. Next up is Karen, pronouns she and her. Okay. I have to share this thanks to good news today. My husband and I love the birdcage. They could not have cast it any better. We loved Agador. Yep. My husband admitted to me that he didn't hear my Guatemalan-ness. He heard my watermelon-ness. I love the joy of this movie and respect it gives. For my pod pet tax, I am including a coyote I spied in Yellowstone and an otter we met at the Denver Aquarium. This brings me such joy.
Oh, my goodness, Karen. Yeah, we were talking about the birdcage yesterday in case you missed it. But if you're listening to this and you're like, why are we talking about the birdcage? Agador Spartacus.
Agador, I do not wear shoes because they make me fall down.
I will fall down. They're eggs. Oh, my God. Okay, we could go on forever. Look at the otter and the fox. Oh, my goodness. All right, next up, we got a quick bird watching photo from Marilyn, pronouns she and her. This is how I spent my birthday last summer. A friend and I took the water taxi in Chicago to Navy Pier with a moment to salute Trump Tower. Yeah, that's an abomination right on the Chicago River, by the way. And next up from Gretchen, pronouns she and her. On International Women's Day, we enjoy creating and listening to compelling speakers for the angry knit-in, not today fascism, knitting cult lady Daniela Young, I think that's how you say that. I'm not sure. Let me know. And her fantastic team put together a meeting of crafters and those who love them. We gathered to stitch thousands of granny squares, making blankets for the unhoused. We discussed resistance, understanding privilege, and radical acceptance. It was an inspiring day. Good to know we have friends everywhere, attached as a small segment of all the blankets together in front of the Capitol. Look at that.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Incredible. Incredible. Oh,
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Gretchen.
Next up from Sue, no pronouns given. I'm an expat in Bali, and I've been a fan since you read the M-Files. The last 2 Sundays, I held a Constitution Amendments reading event at my home for about a dozen people. We had a board on which we marked every time we saw a violation by this regime. Needless to say, there were a lot of marks.
Look at these amazing women. And there's one dude in there. It's 2 dudes. I see a couple of guys in there too.
Oh my God, look at this fucking dog too.
Absolutely incredible. Oh my God. What is that? Is that like a silky Papillon mix?
Oh my God. It's like a, what are those?
It's a tiny teddy bear.
Yorkie something. Oh, it's perfect.
Oh my God, Sue. I want to know more about this dog. You'll have to tell us. That's so cool.
Yeah.
A Constitution Amendments reading, and you marked every time. You got the amendments listed there with all the violations. Sue, that's wonderful. Everybody, thank you so much for sending in your good news. Please pile it on. We want to have so much good news. We don't know what to do with it. Send it to us at dailybeanspod.com. Click on contact. Anything you want to remind everybody about?
Just the last tickets for Nashville. Yeah. If you're around the area on Wednesday, this is it. Wednesday. I guess it would be tomorrow by the time some of you hear this. I will be in Nashville, Tennessee at Zanies, and I cannot wait to meet you that are going. Thank you for skipping Bridget Everett. If you already have the tickets, I totally understand. And we're going to have fun. I'm going to put on a good show for whoever's there because that's what we do. And it's going to be a nice little community. I'm looking forward to meeting all of you.
Amazing. All right, everybody, we'll be back in your ears tomorrow. Until then, please take care of yourselves, take care of each other, take care of the planet, take care of your mental health, and take care of your family. I've been AG.
I've been DG.
And them's the beans.
The Daily Beans is written and executive produced by Allison Gill with additional research and reporting by Dana Goldberg. Sound design and editing is by Desiree McFarlane, with art and web design by Joelle Reeder with Moxie Design Studios. Music for The Daily Beans is written and performed by They Might Be Giants, and the show is a proud member of the MSW Media Network, a collection of creator-owned podcasts dedicated to news, politics, and justice. For more information, please visit mswmedia.com.
MSW Media.